An isolated mountaintop, remote from the petty affairs of this earth, where men spend their lives studying the mysteries of stellar space. The Solar Observatory, with its 150-foot tower telescope, is used exclusively for photographing the sun, and important solar research has been carried on here. Let us see what sunspots look like, those curious phenomena about which we hear and read so much. The round object illustrates the comparative size of the Earth. This is a spectroscopic photograph of a solar prominence, which is an immense flame-like protuberance which frequently dashes out of the surface above the sunspots to a height of 150,000 miles. They might be likened to cyclones of flame. Here we see the giant 100-inch Hooker reflector, the world's largest telescope. A delicate clockwork keeps the huge 100-ton telescope in perfect time with the Earth's movement. To overcome the tremendous friction due to the great weight of the instrument, the main bearings are hollow steel cylinders floating in tanks of mercury. Let us look through this amazing telescope at Saturn. Here is a photograph of the constellation of Auriga, of which Capella is the leading star. Note, as the exposure has been lengthened, how stars of 15th, 18th, and even 20th magnitude become visible. Stars of the 20th magnitude are invisible to the eye even through the largest telescope, but the more sensitive photographic plate records them after several hours' exposure. This is a spiral nebula in Canis Venatici. Canis Venatici would appear much as this. And here we see our nearest neighbor, the moon, as it appears through the great telescope. Popular belief to the contrary, it is highly improbable that man will ever be able to bodily explore stellar space. But by the aid of this amazing telescope, and greater ones to follow, it is reasonable to believe that we are on the verge of great visual voyages of discovery to the very ends of the universe.
I found this right on the NASA website. They published this article just like a week ago. And you see the windows on that jet. That's cool. They're right on the top. That's how you would always want it, right? Here's the history of astronomy at NASA. This is how they really get pictures of the stars. They don't get them from satellites, folks. And NASA isn't really that well known for their telescopes, right? I mean, other than the ones supposedly in space. But we know space is fake, so here you go. There they are. It's one of these things like, if space is fake, then how this, how that? Well, here, this is one of the hows. And they don't even try to hide it anymore. Ostensibly, this is just support to what they can get from Hubble and what they plan to get from the James Webb Space Telescope. But don't you get it? Those things aren't real. This is what is real. And they don't really see anything much more than what you and I can see. And I'm beginning to think that even the folks at NASA, they don't even know what's up there. They really don't. I'm sure some of them probably know more than we do, but my gosh, you know, if they're flying airplanes with telescopes, the thing is, you go up to high altitude, you can't even see the stars that well. I mean, because the light has to hit something. So when it's not hit, you know, the atmosphere gets so thin, there's not much for the light to hit, and you just don't really see much of anything. So, yeah, they spend all the money and they fly around. They've probably seen the dome, and we know that they see whatever's in Antarctica. They don't let us see, but my gosh.
Not only had they mapped vast areas hitherto unseen by man, they had more clearly defined the coastline of Antarctica, discovered a new peak, Mount X-Ray, located a great new range of mountains 150 miles from the South Pole, discovered Land O'Lakes, a fantastic snow-free oasis in the ice desert.
So one of the places they look at the stars really closely is in Antarctica. And I thought the names of these Antarctic locations are pretty interesting. Dome A. If you saw the wind reaches an average speed of a whopping 6 miles per hour, yet the temperatures range between negative 25 and negative 80 degrees C, or even colder in these places. They have stations there, but they just set them up and then they just kind of forget about them. They run automatically for decades, right? Some of them, they say they are occupied, but the altitudes are astounding. 10,000 feet at the surface elevation, and it's not even It's supposed to be so flat you can't even tell you're on a mountain, right? Yeah, but we don't see anything from these places. They put out some stuff, but it's not very convincing at all. They're named after Greek gods. There's Dome A, there's Dome C, there's Dome F. Where's Dome B? I don't know. I don't know if there's a Dome D. I think there might be a Dome E. And then there are other things called, similar, suspiciously similar names to like something to do with like dome and firmament and things like that. Yeah, there's the wind speed, and it's an extremely good astronomical observation site. And this is weird. The sun, they say, they can't see the stars, very many stars. That's the problem with it. It's because you're on the edge of the stars, They can only see the extreme southern stars where, if you've noticed, the majority of the stars are kind of over like the equatorial regions, and that there are fewer stars, and you get to the south, extreme south, and there are fewer stars in real life. And then they say, oh, well, this station that operates by itself communicates via iridium phone. But you look into iridium phones, they're just regular cell phones, people. They have to have a SIM card, and you have to pay money for the global roaming. It just has a more powerful antenna and better or more extreme data compression. Very few people have actually ever used them. And then what about in certain areas where you can't use them? Well, they say, oh, it's because they're embargoed countries, or they're unpopular regions, or they can't let geographically bounded planes, I think they meant planes, to use communication outside of the designated area, so they block it. Yeah, right. It's not, oh, the satellite's there. You could communicate it, but we block you. Well, why do you block me? Well, we block everybody. Oh, okay. It's not because your balloon satellite doesn't go over those areas. Sure. This Iridium satellite phone is communicating that this robot, or this, I don't know, I guess some robot at the station is using the phone to communicate the data from this very real and very important Antarctic station that happens to be named Dome.
We got ours used, and our used one was about £1,200. We got it on eBay. You then have to buy something called an antenna tuner, which is another bit which allows the radio to, the aerial, the antenna to tune itself, another couple of £100. Then for antennae, at the antenna you can use an insulated backstay, which is, we did, and that was another £500. We'll put this in US dollars at the bottom of the screen. You can get a whip aerial, about the same cost. So that's the cost for the equipment. You then need a license. To obtain the license was another £500 plus, which needs what's called a Pacta modem. Pacta modem is £1,000. The other thing about SSB radios is that you need to go and get the license, and they are complicated. It's not like a VHF radio where you push a button and it works. There are different frequencies. The way that the radio signals are sent, they bounce off the ionosphere, and so they are very, very sensitive to the frequency that you're using, the time of day, the cloud coverage. As I said, as yet we haven't seen the real benefit in it. When we go through Panama and into the Pacific, it should come into its own. However, my gut feeling here is that in 2017 they are a little bit kind of redundant. I would also say that for about £100 you can buy an SSB receiver, which just allows you to listen to SSB nets. Do you need one? Do you not need one? I don't know. The judgment is there. Given our time again, I probably wouldn't install one just because of the cost. But they're fun to play with, and you can get, you can get the BBC World Service in the middle of nowhere, which sometimes is really nice. I think they were brilliant. Not sure about it now. The next thing we have is our sat phone. Now, this is it. It's like a 1996 Nokia, but this is an Iridium satellite phone. It costs It cost about £400. We bought this used. New ones are more expensive, up to about £1,000. They plug into your computer, or they plug in our case, to our red box, which is a router, and allow us to send and receive emails at sea, weather at sea. Now just bear in mind here, the data transmission rate here is about the same as a 1980s dial-up modem. They are super slow, and satellite airtime is expensive. So here's the pros and cons with these things. They're fairly cheap to acquire, as in £300-400. The airtime contract is expensive. So we looked to about, I think it's about £800 for a year's subscription to the satellite service and 500 minutes. But unless you renew the subscription, you lose all your minutes. So we got into a situation this year where we still had 400 satellite minutes, but had to renew the subscription for a year or risk losing all that. So just look into the total cost of this stuff. Now there are systems called Iridium Go. I've heard mixed reports about Iridium Go. We have people that absolutely love Iridium Go and have the sets. We also know people and suppliers that have stopped selling them because they are meant to be so unreliable. That's all I know. That's my informed decision on it. If the technology changes and becomes more stable, we would consider that system. Similarly, Iridium are launching, or have launched, another satellite which is meant to provide far more achievable broadband. There's a fleet broadband, which is kind of like almost a hardwired broadband system. Our friends have got those and swear by them. There is also something I read in the yachting press about someone who did download a movie using the satellite airtime mid-ocean and had a $100,000 bill. So whether that was important to them or they had more money than sense, these things rack up a lot of airtime bills. And once you get to the other side, are you going to use it? In 2 years of the Caribbean, we have not used our SSB more than a handful of times. The satellite phone we actually use a lot because you can use it anywhere, and we've got a lot of minutes. So it's actually cheaper to use a sat phone than it is to use international roaming with a UK SIM card to phone from the Caribbean.
There's a satellite dish. Yeah, you can see satellite dish and that. So caught him red-handed there. The satellite dish is pointed at the cell phone tower. On the other side of the cell phone tower, one of the Great Lakes. Okay, so here, this was what I photographed right over a NASA facility. So it's a picture of a sundog, but it's just weird how it developed, as it were. Just odd stuff around the NASA facility. There's one located off of a turnpike as you're going between Chicago and New York, right about in the middle. There's a NASA facility on the edge of Lake Erie. I think it's near Cleveland, and it's a huge amount of land. And what do they do there? That's where this big vacuum chamber is that Brian Box went to, and